Good morning and welcome to the September 17th session of the Transparency, Engagement, and Communication Committee. I am Councilman Michael Holmes, Chair. In chambers with me today is Councilwoman Amanda Cook. Virtually is Councilman Dr. Patrick Harmon. We do not have a quorum today, but there is going to be no vote taken. So what we will have is a presentation from our item 2025-392, Emergency Response and Communication. Assistant City Manager Damon Duquesne will be our presenter.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Glad to be here today. As you stated, I have a presentation on emergency response and communications. This is essentially tailored towards the July 9th, 2025 flash flooding event. So I'll run down through this a little bit, and always feel free to stop me and ask any questions. I have additional staff here too, because I don't typically know any of the answers, so I'll rely on them to provide those. So an event overview. Prior to July 9th, Tropical Depression Chantal had sort of set in around the region, if you recall. Lots of rain, grass is growing like crazy. This is a slow-moving event, and it dumped about 5 to 11 inches, so ground's already saturated, everything is soaked. The forecast rainfall for July 9th was about 1.5 inches, and then obviously much more than that fell, actually 6+ inches in a very short period of time, and this resulted in flash flooding and the typical things that are associated with that, down trees, et cetera, blocked roads. We ended up responding to 23 total calls for service, 19 of those being water rescues. The map that's included on this slide kind of indicates where those calls for service were generated. I included a few photos of city facilities and the impacts to them from this event. West Side Wastewater Treatment Plant is on the left. Top photo is our rear parking area, and then the bottom photo is the last stage of the disinfection process. We have a UV station there that was completely flooded. In fact, there's an item on the Finance Committee agenda to replace the replacement parts for that. And then on the right is the access to the police department off of Westchester. Westchester was closed. And we'll see shortly here in another slide or two why that situation is there. Our consultant who's working on the analysis of our berms and things like that at West Side Wastewater Plant indicated that considering the amount of rainfall that came and the other contributing factors, that could have been close to a 1,000-year storm. So, and I'll talk briefly about that. When we talk about year storms that we design to, the typical standard is 10 years, right? So most things are designed to a 10-year. Depending on certain other circumstances, they might be designed to a higher year flood. But the question always comes up, well, why don't we just build bigger infrastructure? Well, if you build all your infrastructure to handle a 1,000-year storm, your infrastructure costs would be exorbitant and almost impossible to cover, and the size of the infrastructure would be prohibitive to a lot of other things. So I think over time we're going to have to continue to look at that. Probably not, through the end of my career, but I'm sure engineers and scientists will be keeping a close eye on that to see if maybe we shouldn't be bumping those standards up, in coming years and for CIPs of the future regarding size and design storms. So I want to make a couple points about the difference between a flash flood event and something that we do have some warning about, right? So flash flooding is exactly what it says. It's unpredictable. It's obviously dangerous and sudden. In fact, having lived and worked in Arizona for some time, you can have a flash flooding event in an area that hasn't received any rainfall because the event occurs up in the mountains and then all that water comes crashing down in a beautiful sunny day. And so we don't have that happen here very often, thankfully, but it's just something that people, I think, need to be mindful of. And when you get those alerts, to take them seriously, okay? Especially if you're in an area that's known to have flooding, and we're going to touch on that right now. So traditionally, though, we typically have some knowledge of when something is coming, right? It's a tropical storm, it's a hurricane. Those are forecasted. It's on the news every night. It's modeled. We have time to notify folks. We have time to prepare. The map on this slide to the right shows the areas where we know we have known flooding or those types of issues, right? So when there's a tropical storm or a hurricane coming, staff is proactive. We go out, we have barricades staged, we have signage, and all those things are in place so that when and if the storm does come, we can go ahead and get those things in place. And I said, like I said, and I think the time to communicate and notify is the big piece there, right? So when you have advanced knowledge, we make sure we put out advanced word. However, nothing can replace being responsible for oneself, right? So knowledge is power. So North Carolina Flood Risk Information System has an interactive risk map, and I'm going to pull that up for you, that you can go in and anybody can look at their address and see if there's any type of flood risk as far as these maps are concerned. So the address that I typed in originally is City Hall, which is right there where that marker is, and you can see there's no flood risk here. If you scroll out, I'll go down and try and get to where, say, I can pick any random address. This is a good one here. So if I click on this address, it's going to tell me that there's a portion of this building intersects a special flood hazard area. And so the owner of this property can go on there and take a look and say, hey, I might need to be more aware during flooding events, or if I'm purchasing a property, or et cetera, right? So with this is available and out there for folks to go in at any time and take a look. And there's much more to this, and I won't go into too much detail, but the ability to do that is out there now, okay? Go back to this. Any questions on that?
And this is accessible to anyone? They just go to this link and
Yes, sir.
they're able to access this?
They can click on that link and it'll take you straight there, and you can just enter an address. You don't have to create an account or anything. Next is notification methods, and there are many, but I want to focus on a few that folks can sign up for and that are really beneficial. So Genie, Guilford Emergency Alert Notification Information System. Anyone can join this and manage their account, provides weather alerts and other safety information, and it supports all those forms of communication, text, email, call, and potential app notifications. You can put in up to 6 locations. So not just your home, but your school, the work of your partner or your spouse or your kids, church, all those sorts of things you can put in there and get notifications about. So I'll just kind of show you, I've signed into my account. This is very simple. When you go to this site, and just for everyone's knowledge, that the Guilford County has been noticed to please change our logo at the top to match our new branding. Yes, sir.
I wasn't going to say anything.
They are working on it. Yes, you were. You were absolutely going to say something. So this is my account. Creating the account is very simple. It's literally just name, address, those sorts of things. But what you can do, like we talked about, is put in the forms of communication that you want to receive. You can go to locations. So in here, I just have work right now. If I want to add another location, I can call it, High Point. Sorry don't worry about those red squiggly lines. And et cetera. So High Point PD, I would put the address in. It'll verify it on a map. And then that address is in there too. So anytime there's an alert for these multiple locations, you will receive it. You can also tell it what type of things you want to know. I want to know community information. Send me the following. Emergency alerts is already checked. Crime alerts, community notifications, things related to weather. So there's a whole bunch of items that you can have checked. And then over time, certainly you may or may not want to receive all of those, but you can manage that. You can even manage when you receive them. I will say this, with all forms of communication that are going to come in this fashion, you have to have your notifications on your phone. Okay, so that's something that we can't necessarily as a city help people do, and there's another thing we need people to do that we can't actually do for them either, but we can help them understand. So that's Genie. There are other notification methods. Reverse 911 is an opportunity that's performed by the Guilford County Emergency Management On-Call Coordinator. That's the data that they use. There's some cell and internet information that's available. I love the graphic on this slide because, I don't know, certain people don't remember that, but it's awesome, right? And then wireless emergency alerts. We all receive these. In fact, when it happens and you're in a workspace or you're at the grocery store or something, you can tell it's happened because everybody typically has it. And on July 9th, actually, we all received one of these. We all received a flash flood warning. It can be done locally if there's a specific life safety criteria that are met, and so that just has to be done. We'll do that through our folks with the county. What they do is draw a polygon around that area. So, for example, where our known flooding areas are, that could be done. But again, the alerts must be turned on in the settings on your phone. And last but not least, the local media is very good about reporting on these things, and the emergency broadcast system. If you still listen to old school radio, that's out there. You'll hear the tests occasionally. And it's, believe it or not, it's pretty effective if people are listening to the radio. Most people are streamers now. I'm a streamer, personally. But so, again, along with knowledge is power. After every event that involves any type of emergency response, whether it's public services or police, fire, whatever, we conduct an after-action review. So they're conducted every time we have an emergency. We do one after every furniture market. And furniture market's been happening for a long time. And so the purpose is to just learn what went on. Is there anything we can improve? What worked well? What didn't? Are we doing things that we shouldn't? Or are there things that we should be doing that we aren't? We include all stakeholders. And it's a constructive review. They're great meetings. All egos are set aside. It's all about being the best we can be the next time something comes along. So it's not just about the response, but it's about, were the communications adequate? And, did we address these things? Are the visual cues out there adequate for those sorts of things? And we come up with a list of recommendations. The follow-up actions from July 9th that came out of our after-action meeting, permanent warning signs. I have to give full credit to the manager on this. I got to tell you, there was a little bit of a communication barrier there for me. She kept saying, well, we should put up signs. And I said, well, if it's a flash flood, we don't know it's coming. How do we put up the signs? And she said, permanent signs. And I was like, great idea. So what we've done is we're putting together the estimates and the quotes, and we're looking at how many and how frequently those known flooding sites are, where we could put flashing signs that says road flooded that could be activated when the road is actually flooded. So we don't have to necessarily be out there in advance of it. So that's being handled right now. City facility analyses. The floodplain analysis and berm analysis is underway with a consultant out at Westside Wastewater Treatment Plant. We're also doing an access analysis at the PD to make sure that if we have issues there in the future, we can still get 911 folks in and out, PD, first responders, et cetera. And then communications. We're working with Mr. Hollis and his team on ways that we can inform the public, not necessarily about the event itself. We want to be able to inform people through the city that there's something going on. But the city shouldn't necessarily be someone's first point of touch. Should be the emergency manager's office. Guilford County emergency managers, that's what they do. They're excellent at it, and they're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're not necessarily responding to the event like city staff is. So what we want our staff to do is respond, inform, and then we can get some of the word out. So really rely on these other agencies. So between Genie and the web-enabled alerts, we want our folks to be prepared. And I'm going to bring up another website quickly here in a moment, and then people's actions. So preparedness, I'll show you our emergency management landing site for our city, and it ties into others, but people's actions. So the fire chief isn't here, but he can tell you on July 9th, he was parked with his lights on, standing out in the street on Westchester, having people stop and saying the road is flooded. 3 of those calls for water rescues came from people who ignored his direction and drove past him anyway. I don't know how we remedy that. We'll always go get them, right? We will never leave anybody stranded. But that takes away resources that could be doing other things at that point in time, and it's completely avoidable. So that's where we could use everybody's help in helping folks understand that when, I know that you always go home this way, but today we need to find you a better way to get home because it's not safe. And so people's actions. And then preparedness, there are lots of things, and we've all seen them, but I don't know how many of us, and I'm guilty of it myself, have adequate supplies and batteries and those sorts of things. But earlier in this slide presentation on the Genie slide, there's a link to this page, which is a city page. And there you can see Chief Foster, stately, in the bottom right. And this is our emergency management page here. It has good information on it. It also has many links that are super helpful as well. So ready.gov, and it's in multiple languages. Ready Guilford, emergency preparedness, and FEMA are all on there as well. So with that, that's sort of a high-level, overview of sort of just responding to this type of an event. Of course, there are obviously other events that are man-made or, other that, but typically, public safety and even public services, I'm proud to say something, a little known fact about our public services staff, they're all incident command system trained, right? So, including myself. So we all understand how the incident command structure works. And if you're not familiar, that is when we show up to a scene and it's a multi-agency event, there's a structure in place, and the fire department does this really well. They do it on every single call that they run across the country. They're very good at it. Everybody understands their role and who's doing what at that time, and it helps just things move more smoothly. So, your entire staff, including your public services folks, have all been trained in that to make sure that things go well. But with that, I don't have any other slides other than a question slide, and I'll be happy to take any or discuss anything you'd like. And like I said, I have additional staff here to help out if needed.
Thank you, Damon. At this time, we'll open it up to any questions from the committee members. Patrick, Dr. Herman, if you are listening, you are now free to ask questions. And so we'll open it up to any questions.
Yeah, I had just a few things. So number one, I really understand from my work in teaching, people sometimes do not do what is in their best interest. And I think sometimes it comes down to a level of trust. And I applaud our police and fire departments for the community activities that they participate in that allow people to get to know them on a personal level. I know that we have Community Day coming up next weekend. And so I just want to highlight that if people, don't do what's right, it may not be because they don't believe you or it's a very strange experience to watch someone actively choose to do something against their better judgment. So I would hope that one of the things that Dr. Harmon has brought is kind of the compassion commitment from our city, and I think that I would love to take that on for us to help highlight how people can take care of themselves and take care of each other better during these instances. So I take that challenge on because I do see that that's something that we have a part in participating in. But I talked with you recently about a resident that I met with, and I think that this is very apropos for this conversation because this can seem very complicated to the public, including myself, when it comes to inherited infrastructure. That many people live in older parts of High Point and have inherited property situations that maybe they didn't fully understand. And so this particular resident has inherited underground drainage pipes that do not belong to the city, and therefore for almost 100 years, I guess at this point it's like 85 years,
That's right.
This system has existed, and it has never been conveyed to the city to maintain, and now it would cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars to personally fix the system in order to even convey it over to the city for a lot of legal reasons that we probably can't explain today. But I do think that there is some value in us investigating how we might start to work through some of those historic issues that we've inherited. We're certainly not responsible. Nobody working here today is responsible for how things were handled in the past. But for people who might open up that map and look and see, oh, I live in a floodplain and I didn't know. I wasn't informed when I purchased this property or rented this property. What can we tell them about what the city's commitment is to keeping them safe in the event that something happens and these flood areas are activated, and it's not really their fault that they're living there or working there, but that's just where they are today. What can we say to them in those cases?
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is good for them for looking it up to see if they're in a risk area. Because again, that whole knowledge is power thing is true, right? You can't protect yourself against something you're not aware of. So A, that's a good thing. B, what the city can do is we can help them to sign up for and direct them to the sites to get the notifications of things that may be coming in the future. So we can help them, moving forward in that regard. And probably last but not least is we can have city staff take a look at their situation and see, what specifically it may be driving that. If it's just topography, there's nothing, that the city can do about that. If there's public stormwater infrastructure in the area, one of the things that we do is we maintain that. We keep those things clean, we keep them flowing, and we can make sure that those areas, and we already do this, are targeted well and kept free so that nothing would be backing up into a private system from the city side. So those are the things that we can do. And we can help them, to be informed in the future, and B, we can take a look and make sure that we're doing everything we can on our side, and we can maybe direct them to some resources that could help them also with their private section.
And this was not this homeowner, but when I was talking about this problem with someone else, they were like, well, why don't they just close it up? If they own it, can they just close it up? Because, they're getting trash and debris that's coming from way far away into their system that they seem to be owning on their property, and it's backing up, bringing, Chick-fil-A bags and Dorito debris into their yard. So it's obviously not coming from their property. So do they have the right to close it up if they don't want to fix it and they don't want to have that problem continue?
I'm hesitant to answer that for the risk that it may place on the city, frankly. Every situation would be different. I mean, it's their personal property. So how they choose to handle the drainage on it is essentially up to them. I would caution anybody before they just completely close off any type of drainage structure as to whether that is in their best interest or not. They should really hire an expert to come in and provide them with some advice. Ultimately it's theirs, but someone should certainly, a licensed professional should come in and advise them on if that's feasible or not. The water will pass if it was closed, but someone needs to take a look at that and make sure that they're not creating a bigger problem than they may already have.
Thank you, Damon.
Yes, ma'am.
Damon, earlier you talked about the design being based on the number of year storms. It seems like we're having 1,000-year storms every other year now. Has that played into the calculation of how we're going to address infrastructure going forward, the acceleration of these larger weather events? Is that something that you guys are taking into a calculation, or is it really just a standard evaluation that you guys apply to the infrastructure design?
So I'll clarify. Great. That's actually a very good question. So it doesn't apply directly across the board. We'll run scenarios through the design process on various year storms, and depending on the scenario or the exact location of where things are happening. So, for example, the wastewater treatment plants, they sit at the very bottom of the hill, right? That type of stuff runs downhill, we all have heard, right? So we know that they're going to have bigger impacts from any event because of the way that they're situated. So we would tend to design those for a greater year storm. In a standard, typical, maybe street-type situation, 10-year storm generally seems to be pretty good. Yeah. Streets are passable, things, as long as we keep everything clean and everything flowing, works pretty well. So on a case-by-case, we'll look at a higher year storm event. And so I guess the quick answer to the question is yes. I mean, we do it on case-by-case. It's not written that you must design just to 10-year. We have the option to design bigger, and when appropriate, we do.
While we're looking at the floodplain map, for neighborhoods who are adjacent or kind of overlap with some of these floodplain areas, I think back to the Foxwood Meadows neighborhood. What are some of the options to potentially alleviate some of these consistent floodings in residential areas.
So Foxwood Meadows wasn't necessarily a stormwater project as it was an access project. So mitigating the flooding in those areas that are already built out is a product of the topography.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't know that necessarily we need to try and control that flooding, because that would be a lot of work in a specifically targeted area for several smaller events. Not saying that it isn't worth it, but I think ensuring that there's adequate access in those events so that there's ingress and egress for residents and or public safety, ambulance, et cetera, is the investment that the city should be looking at making in those situations.
Okay. Thank you.
But is there some advantage, to adding trees and plants and things that, dry riverbeds, things that will help absorb the water on those properties, or?
So adding those type of amenities, ma'am, is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Planting trees and keeping erosion from occurring and those sorts of
Right.
things, always helpful, no matter what, whether it's flooding or not. The maintenance of dry stream beds or maybe waterways that only function in events like this, that's important as well. So in that case, you'd want to keep things out of there. So we want to make sure people aren't building up to and on those those type of facilities, and making sure that they're clear. Yes, those types of things, keeping that available for the water to flow out is the most helpful thing. And again, if it's a private system, and there are lots of private systems in the city that people know about, right? That HOAs own and maintain. It's on their plat when they record those. And they do a really, really good job of that. And I think some of the issues that we see, are typically in our more historic parts of the city, where this infrastructure was built and then houses were built on top of it. And some folks, it's not I don't want to say it's common, but it's not rare either, where we get these calls. And most people understand, that, hey, my house is sitting on top of this thing. The city can't come in and do this, right? And it was there and built part of that original development, and then other decisions were made over time. But to answer your question exactly, is keeping those types of things clear and well-maintained is really the best thing that folks can do, and the least expensive.
Well, that's what I was kind of trying to get at, is that it's a lot easier to make that investment in a tree now.
Yes.
than
Yeah, or to
replace the pipe.
to regularly go down and, take a look and make sure there aren't things, fallen trees or stuff like that are blocking that. Because as the water flow, you've seen it, we've all seen it, right? It just pushes all those things to a certain point, and then it dams it up and things come out. So getting those fallen tree branches and things like out of there too. Doesn't cost much, and it really helps.
Any other questions? Councilman Harmon? If not, I would just like to say, for all of you who work in our emergency response, thank you. I know that it is sometimes perilous work for those who sometimes don't even heed their better judgment. And so you guys are doing the Lord's work, and I just want to say thank you from the committee and the city of High Point and the citizens of High Point. If there are no other items to come before the committee, then we will be adjourned.